time for this show, and it comes from being an English comedienne, B. Lilly. In fact, it's 4 tracks, to be accurate, and if I'm not mistaken, all 4 are written by Irving Berlin. Let's start off with a real oldie. I was born in Michigan.
I was born in Michigan, and I wish and wish again that I was there in the place where I was born. There's a boy in Michigan, and I'd like to fish again in the river that flows beside the fields of waving corn. A lonesome gal am I.
And here's the reason why. You want to go back, you want to go back, you want to go back to the farm, far away from harm, with a milk pail on your arm.
I miss the rooster, the one that used to wake me up at 4 a.m. I think your great big city's very pretty.
Nevertheless, you want to be there, you want to see there a certain someone full of charm.
That's why I wish again that I was in Michigan, down on the farm. I'm going back to the shack where the black-eyed Susans grow. I love you so.
Always loves them so. All around on the ground where you found the one I know, made it up so long ago.
The honeybees all know I'm coming. You can hear them softly humming. You'll be losing your little Susan.
You better be getting busy buzzing around.
To stroll again down the lane to the plain old rustic seat would be a treat.
And then I'll bring out the ring for the finger of my sweet.
Oh, she's mighty sweet. And when I'm tied to the pride of the countryside,
maybe you'll introduce me to my corn-fed bride when I get back to the shack where the black-eyed Susans grow.
Take it, baby.
Got a pile around here. Lazy, I want to be lazy. I long to be out in the sun with no work to be done.
My big net's not like you.
Under that awning they call the sky, stretching and yawning.
You haven't yawned in years.
And let the world go drifting by. I want to peep through that deep tangled wildwood, counting sheep till I sleep like a child would, with a great big valise full of books to read where it's peaceful, while I'm killing time being lazy.
When I'm feeling lonely and sad and when I've got the blues, I love to hear the squeaking of Susanna's Sunday shoes.
I hear them squeaking down the street and squeaking on the stair. There's not a sound of any kind to beat it anywhere.
I love the twang of the old banjos.
I love the hot music of the piccolo.
I love good singing, I don't mind whose, but best I love the squeaking of Susanna's Sunday shoes. That's why I wish again that I was in Michigan, down on the farm.
Bing and B. Lilly and 4 old toe tappers from the past. Hope you like those. In a few weeks, I hope to present another hour of excerpts from Philco Radio Time. But right now, we're coming up to the 8 o'clock news. I'll be back shortly with some big band sounds, plus part 3 in our tongue-in-cheek history of television. We seem to have lost the picture.
3DB Newsfront.
Good evening, I'm Charles Collins. The Alcohol and Drug Foundation has called for Lindeman's 250 millilitre Tropicana cooler packs to be banned in all states. The president of the foundation, Dr. Harding Burns, is highly critical of the drink's packaging. Dr. Burns says it's part of a market strategy aimed at attracting children to drinking alcohol at a younger age. He says moves against the packaging by the Victorian, New South Wales and South Australian governments are to be commended, but other states and territories haven't been so quick to move. A new report says over-regulation of Australian business has led to a pervasive network of controls, quotas, subsidies and barriers to competition. According to the Bureau of Industry Economics, Australian industry has historically been lumbered with heavy regulation at both state and federal level. The Bureau says the federal government must first assess the cost and benefit of any business regulations if it is to combat the problem. It says in its report that regulations designed to meet specific objectives may often have unforeseen and undesirable secondary effects. And it says the evaluation of any government regulation is a mammoth undertaking. Rumours of another coup attempt in the Philippines are strong this weekend as President Corazon Aquino appeals for peace in the Muslim stronghold of Mindanao. In the capital of Manila, troops are manning barricades and checkpoints around the presidential palace and offices. Police and military are on a red alert. Since Mrs. Aquino's People Power revolution brought her to power and ousted Ferdinand Marcos, this is the third coup rumour. In Lebanon, an international controversy is brewing over the shooting of a member of the United Nations peacekeeping forces by Israeli soldiers. Jay Bashinsky is travelling with peacekeeping forces and filed this report.
The Irish soldiers serving with the UN peacekeeping force in Lebanon blame Israel for the death earlier this week of one of their buddies, 33-year-old Corporal Dermot McLaughlin. A father of 5 children, 2 adopted, Corporal McLaughlin had just returned from Christmas leave in Ireland. He was sent to man an outpost opposite the line held by Israeli forces and their surrogates, the South Lebanon Army. An Irish Army officer described the incident as he stood in the rubble that once was a locker room in the local UN field headquarters.
The shell from the tank? That's the impact of the shell from the tank. There were 3 rounds fired. All hit the building. We got the first one, in actual fact, made the hole in the wall, and that he was killed instantly. When I arrived, he was dead. So
Israel has apologized, but the Israeli tank officer who ordered the shooting of the brightly lit UN building has not been put on trial. Jay Bashinsky, Brashit, Lebanon.
Swedish doctors are reported to be preparing for the world's first transplant of human brain tissue. London's Sunday Times newspaper says this year's operation will involve the injection of brain cells from a human embryo about 10 weeks old into the brain of a patient suffering Parkinson's disease. Parkinson's disease kills the brain cells which affect movement, and scientists believe the successful grafting of healthy cells could help restore motor control in sufferers. Fetal brain cells are the only type which can be used because of the flexibility of their development. Finally to tennis, and Lawrence Costin has a summary from the day's play in the Ford Australian Open.
Australian players had a most productive day at the Open, with Liz finally defeating Helena Sakova, ranked 6th in the world. Peter Doohan of New South Wales beat Kevin Curran of the US. Curran was runner-up in the Open to Mats Wilander in 1984, and Mark Kratzmann of Queensland beat Ken Flack. Pat Cash, as expected, won his match against Ben Testament of the US in 4 sets, 6-3, 6-7, 6-1, 6-2. Other winners today were Yannick Noah, Paul Annacone, who defeated the number 5 seed Andre Leconte, Hannah Mandlikova and Zina Garrison, who put paid to Wendy Turnbull in straight sets. A big gallery attended today's matches in ideal weather conditions. Lawrence Costin at Kooyong.
News time 8:04, and finally Melbourne's weather. A few showers developing overnight as a freshening west to northwest wind shifts cooler southwesterly. We can expect an overnight low of 15 and a top tomorrow 21 degrees. I'm Charles Collins.
This has been 3DB Newsfront.
This is Thanks for the Memory, and your host, Bob Machliss. And welcome back for this third hour of Thanks for the Memory, and thank you again, Frank McKay. If for some reason there's a group of you listening together tonight, why don't you form into a line and we'll all do a conga. Come on now, up on your feet for a conga. One behind the other, hands on the hips of the person in front. Okay, you standing up? Good. Let's have a practice. 1, 2, 3, kick. 1, 2, 3, kick. Good, you've got the idea. And that's the best way I can think of to introduce Xavier Cougar with his special conga track. 1, 2, 3, kick!
1, 2, 3, kick. 1, 2, 3, kick. 1, 2, 3.
In this rhythmic conga, way that mother kick.
1, 2, 3, kick. 1, 2, 3, kick.
Oh, start the conga going, see those trumpets blowing, don't delay, be quick.
1, 2, 3, kick. 1, 2, 3, kick.
Yes, you will find it charming, quite a bit alarming, way that Cuban kick. Let the rhythm scare you. If it does, we dare you. Do this dropping kick. Oh, join the Cuban conga in this rhythm conga with that falling kick.
1, 2, 3, kick. 1, 2, 3, kick.
Kick. 1, 2, 3, kick. Ah, Xavier Cougar, getting everyone into a conga mood with 1, 2, 3, kick. Tell you what, you should have seen Frank McKay and myself doing the conga around the studio during that last record. Then again, perhaps you shouldn't have. A conga line of 2 does look just a little bit strange. At 10 minutes past 8 on Melbourne's own 3DB, it's time for us to sit back and take a rest and listen to Benny Goodman's great recording of Loch Lomond.
Oh, you take the high road and I'll take the low road, but I'll be in Scotland for you. For me and my true love may never meet again on the bonny, bonny banks of Loch Lomond. By yon bonny bank and by yon bonny brave, where the sun shines bright on Loch Lomond, where me and my true love forever want to gay on the bonny, bonny bank
a high road, and I'll take a low road.
But I'll be in Scotland for you, for me and my true love may never meet again on the bonny bank, on the bonny, bonny bank, on the bonny, bonny banks of Loch Lomond, Loch Lomond.
A good swinging version of Loch Lomond from Benny Goodman. By the way, did you catch Benny joining Martha Tilton briefly on the vocal on that one? It's 13 minutes past 8 on Melbourne's own 3DB, and you're listening to Thanks for the Memory, presented by yours truly, Bob Machliss. I'd hate to think how many pop songs have been based on the classics over the years, especially the works of composers like Tchaikovsky. Well, here's the maestro's Fifth Symphony, twisted into a song called Moon Love. This version comes from Sammy Kaye, and the vocal is by Clyde Burke.
Will this be moon love?
A moonlight fantasy with Clyde Burke.
Will this be moon love? Nothing but moon love. Will you be gone when the dawn comes stealing through? Are these just moon dreams, grandfather moonbeams? But when the moon fades away, will my dreams come true? Much as I love you, don't let me love you. If I must pay for your kiss with lonely tears, say it's not moon love, tell me it's true love. Say you'll be mine when the moon disappears.
Sammy Kaye and Moon Love on Thanks for the Memory. And now for a track from Errol Garner. Do you know that Errol Garner stayed a solo pianist and never played with a band? And the reason, as I understand it, is that Mr. Garner quite simply can't read music. So rather than learn, he decided early on to go his own way. Well, the band business's loss is our gain. And here's Errol Garner now to prove it, with a number named after him, Errol's Bounce. distinctive sound, some say the very orchestral sound of Errol Gardner and Errol's Bounce, taking the time on Melbourne's own 3DB along to 8:20. And now, a man who, while still in high school in Chicago in the 1920s, is credited with having created what is known as Chicago-style jazz, or so my reference books say at least. Chicago-style jazz is basically Dixieland 2-beat, changed to 4-beat time, and the man they referred to was Bud Freeman. Well, I'm not really expert enough at jazz to argue that one any further, but whatever the facts, Bud Freeman certainly produced some fine music. Here's his group's 1939 recording of the old favourite, China Boy. Bud Freeman and a good old driving version of China Boy on Thanks for the Memory on Melbourne's own 3DB. In the early 1940s, Decca persuaded Groucho Marx to record, in quotes, his, quote, greatest hits. Half a dozen tracks resulted, including this Groucho classic from Animal Crackers, the number that later became Groucho's theme song on television. Hooray for Captain Spaulding, and by the way, hooray for Groucho Marx.
At last we are to meet him, the famous Captain Spaulding. From climates hot and scalding, the captain has arrived.
Hello, I must be going. I cannot stay, I came to say I must be going. I'm glad I came, but just the same, I must be going.
For my sake you must stay. If you should go away, you'll spoil the party I am throwing.
I'll stay a week or two, I'll stay the summer through, but I am telling you, I must be going.
Before you go, will you oblige us and tell us of your deeds so glowing?
I'll do anything you say. In fact, I'll even stay.
Good.
But I must be going. Someone call me Schnorrer.
Hooray, hooray, hooray! He went into the jungle where all the monkeys throw nuts.
If I stay here, I'll go nuts.
Hooray, hooray, hooray!
I put all my reliance in courage and defiance and risk my life for science. Hey, hey!
One day in Madagascar, he bagged a dozen weasels.
Yes, and all of them had measles.
Hooray, hooray, hooray!
I faced a chimpanzee once, so close I felt his breath. The creature looked at me once and laughed himself to death.
Hooray for Captain Spaulding!
That's me! One day I caught an eagle, too big for me to tote. I changed him for a sparrow, a jackass, and a goat.
Hooray for Captain Spaulding!
That's me! One day a vicious monkey chased me a mile or two. I hid behind a donkey, the donkey fainted too.
Hooray for Captain Spaulding!
That's me! I had a guy named Teeter, he lent me his repeater. I brought down a mosquito, hey, hey!
Hooray for Captain Spaulding, the African explorer! Hooray, hooray, hooray!
The first day I arrived in Africa...
Hooray for Captain Spaulding, the African explorer! Hooray, hooray, hooray!
The first day I arrived in
Hooray for Captain Spaulding, the African explorer! Hooray, hooray, hooray!
The first day I arrived... Hooray for Captain... Fooled you that time, didn't I?
Hooray, hooray, hooray!
Hello, I must be going, and that was the one and only Groucho. And hooray for Captain Spaulding. It's 27 minutes past 8 on Thanks for the Memory, and time for some more comedy. Phil Harris now with a song that was popular on record as far back as the 1890s. And you can't get much further back than that. It actually was recorded on a number of early cylinders. A song all about the preacher and the bear.
Preacher went out walking, 'twas on one Sunday morn. It was against his religion, but he took his gun along. He shot himself some mighty fine quail and one little measly hare. But on his way returning home, he met a great big grizzly bear. Now the bear got down in the middle of the road on all fours like a great big toad and looked that preacher right square in the eye. And the preacher looked at him and said bye-bye, started down the road and took out the run. The bear right after that preacher did come, running the run for about a mile. And they both sat down and rested a while. The preacher got up, started again. The bear, he started out with more vim, and they ran till he spotted the tree, said up on the limb was a place for me. Bear got close, made a grab for him. Preacher leaped up and he made the limb, pulled himself up and turned about, cast his eyes to the skies and he did shout, "Oh Lord, you delivered Daniel from the lion's den, also delivered Jonah from the belly of the whale, and then the Hebrew children from the fiery furnace." So the good book do declare, yes, Lord, if you can't help me, for goodness sake, don't help that bear. Just about then, the limb let go and the preacher came tumbling down. Reached in his pocket, pulled his razor out just before he hit the ground. He hit the ground with an awful bang, it was a terrible sight. The preacher and the bear with the razor in his hair just a-cutting left and right. While they rolled around on the ground, the preacher was up and then he was down. The bear let out an awful moan. It looked like the preacher was holding his own. Thought if I'd get out of here alive with that good book, I will abide. I'll never sin on Sabbath day, and Sunday come, I'll pray and pray to the heavens. He did glance, said, "Lord, just give me one more chance." Then his suspenders gave away and he knocked that bear 10 feet away. Then the preacher got up and made a bound for a tree where he'd be safe and sound. Pulled himself up and turned about, cast his eyes to the skies and he did shout, "Oh Lord, you delivered Daniel from the lion's den, also delivered Jonah from the belly of the whale, and then the Hebrew children from the fiery furnace." So the good book do declare, yes, Lord, if you can't help me, for goodness sakes, don't help that bear.
Oh Lord, dance to live music from 7:30 p.m. with music for all tastes before and after the floor show. Then hot things up a bit with a great mix of up-tempo recorded music from 11 till midnight. For a great night out at sensible prices, it's the Swagman Restaurant in Ferntree Gully.
This summer when you want to buy a cooler, you'll be seeing red. Now Coral Cooler brings you summer in a bottle, with the fruity, fresh flavor of a wine cooler made from light red wine and fruit juices. You could say it's a cooler red evolution. Coral Cooler is also available in white. But go on, try new Coral Cooler and go red this summer. Coral Cooler, the cooler cooler.
You're listening to Thanks for the Memory.
Thank you, Frank, and let's have one more comedy track. This one comes from Burns and Allen and features probably the most enduring side of their comedy act, that in which Gracie tells George all about yet another of her highly improbable relatives. In this case, Gracie's nephew Willie.
Look, you got a letter from your sister, Bessie.
Oh, Bessie.
What does she say? What does she
Well,
say? Anything?
She's just wonderful
Is she?
herself. But her
Good.
son, Willie.
Willie? Willie, that's the one with the high blood pressure.
Yeah,
The one who sleeps on the floor to keep his blood pressure down.
Yeah, that's the one.
Smart kid.
Yes.
Yes. What about Willie?
Well, he broke his back.
I'm glad to hear that.
Huh?
Broke his back? How'd he do that?
Well, on account of he's left-handed.
He broke his back because he's left-handed.
Yeah, well, you see what happened was he had a donut in his right-hand pocket, and when he went to take it out with his left hand,
He broke his back?
Yeah.
Well, you tell Bessie the next time to tell Willie that if he's got a donut in his right-hand pocket, to try to take it out with his right hand.
Yeah, but that's hard to do when you have your pants on backwards.
Had his pants on backwards.
Yes, well, you see what happened was he had a suit of clothes with two pairs of pants, and he put one pair on frontwards and one pair on backwards.
So that he could go either way?
That's when the truck hit him.
The truck. What truck?
The truck that didn't have a slide slit.
Why didn't the truck have a slide slit?
Because he had...
Hold it, hold it. Did the guy in the truck have his pants on backwards, or did Willie have his pants on backwards?
Oh, Judge, you're trying to confuse me.
I'm confusing you?
Willie had his pants on back.
Oh, but the fellow in the truck, why didn't he have his light slit?
He didn't have to. It was daytime. Am I getting you
Well, no, that's how to follow. But if he had his pants on backward, I mean, the fellow in the truck, if he had his light slit, didn't he see Willie coming?
He didn't know it was Willie. He saw two pairs of pants coming toward him, and he drove between them.
Goodbye.
While some of their humour has unavoidably dated after 40 years, I think that those Burns and Allen family sketches are still as funny as ever. Well, back to the big band sound now, and a most unusual arrangement of the old Gershwin favourite, Swonderful. This record features Artie Shaw and his orchestra, but the musical setting worked out by Ray Conniff, was worked out by Ray Conniff, who chose a Spanish motif. It's quite different from the way you normally hear the song, but I tell you what, it works extremely well. Marty Shaw with the Ray Conniff arrangement of Swonderful. And if you remember in the late 50s and early 60s, when Conniff came into his own right as a band leader, he actually produced a number of records based on that sound. And one of the most successful was a not dissimilar sounding version of that song. And that takes the time on Thanks for the Memory along to 23 minutes to 8. Just before we move on to the history of television for tonight, let's hear a famous Sinatra track from the mid-1940s, Old Man River, from the movie Till the Clouds Roll By, which was vaguely based on the life of Jerome Kern. It's been a long time since I've seen that film, but I seem to recall that Frank was standing on a podium surrounded by the full MGM orchestra. Well, something like that anyway. And I also seem to remember that this wasn't considered to have been in the best of taste by critics at the time. Be that as it may, the record is still great listening. Frank Sinatra, Old Man River.
Here we all work along the Mississippi. Here we all work while the white folk play, pulling them boats from the dawn till sunset, getting no rest till the judgment day. Don't look up and don't look down. You don't dast make the white boss frown. Bend your knees and bow your head and pull that rope until you're dead. Let me go away from the Mississippi. Let me go away from the white man, boss. Show me that stream called the River Jordan. That's the old stream that I long to Old Man River, that old man river, he must know something, but he don't say nothing. He just keeps rolling. He keeps on rolling along. He don't plant taters, and he don't plant cotton, and them what plant some is soon forgotten. But Old Man River just keeps rolling along. You and me, we sweat and strain, bodies all aching and racked with pain. Tote that box, lift that bell, you get a little drunk, then you land in jail. I get weary and so sick of trying. I'm tired of living, but I'm feared of dying. And Old Man River, he just keeps rolling
A young Frank Sinatra throwing everything into Old Man River. And I reckon that song must be high on the list of often recorded songs. Well, after this break, I'll be back with part 3 in the history of television.
Get out, get out, get out and about. Summer's on the run. It's the time, it's the time, it's the time of the year to get out in the sun. We're gonna keep summer beautiful all summer through, and we'll keep Australia beautiful. Let's see what we can do. From the East Coast to the West Coast, from the mountains to the sea, down the highways through the cities, everyone agrees we gotta keep summer beautiful all summer through, and we'll keep Australia beautiful. Let's see what we can do.
Littering could spoil the summer. Keep summer beautiful and you'll keep Australia beautiful too.
We gotta keep summer beautiful, keep summer beautiful.
Beyond ordinary coolers is Coral Cooler. Fruity and fresh, with a tang that lasts just a little bit longer. Coral Cooler. Wine and juice never tasted so good. Coral Cooler. Available in white and red. Coral Cooler. The cooler.
You're listening to Thanks for the Memory.
It's time now for part 3 of We Seem to Have Lost the Picture, the tongue-in-cheek history of the early days of television from the BBC. Your host is British announcer John Bird.
But the triumph brought with it the danger of national catastrophe. It's there in that broadcast. You notice, of course, that both the announcers were Scottish. I mean, even if they hadn't said so, you could tell they spoke with the same accent. The news station at Kirkoshots had clearly fallen into the hands of a tightly knit group of extreme nationalists. At first, the BBC in London were very alarmed indeed. Then, after some thought, they decided the best thing to do was to behave absolutely normally. So they totally panicked. What about Wales? Wales! The news station at Wenvo was due to open in 5 months. What are we going to do? What are we going to do? The answer? New announcers. It was their fault. Malcolm and McIntyre were their impenetrable Highland brogues. The BBC always did have announcer problems, even with the man who claims to have been there very first, back in 1924 on radio. Tom Payne of Newcastle Station 5NO.
I did the announcing from the very first, and it was an announcement that very soon roused a complaint. I was told from London to announce as follows. This is 5NO calling. This is 5NO calling. This is 5NO calling.
Well, what was wrong with that?
The trouble was that people were writing in to me to say, for goodness sake, stop shouting, this is 5NO. This is 5NO calling. This is 5NO calling.
Ah, I see. Everything was wrong with it. So at Plymouth, experiments were tried with a different announcing technique.
Creep along the passage, which was very old and creaky, open the studio door, crawl quietly up to the microphone, and start.
Well, that might have been all right for radio, but on television, didn't they look a bit sort of balmy? The television announcers had their own problems. Elizabeth Cowell recalls.
I remember a studio attendant sat on the floor and gave you 1 poke in the ribs for smile and 2 for speak.
The BBC had to be careful, but with Wenvo coming up, the problem was desperate. One hint of that old Welsh lilt in the announcer's voice, the BBC thought. Thousands of dark, hairy, glowering, fierce little men would come streaming across the border, pillaging and singing beautiful old rugby songs with dirty but mercifully incomprehensible lyrics. They couldn't take the slightest risk. Now, in the old days, they'd take people who could speak and train them to announce. Now, this training became a little more basic.
Let's hear the 2 basic sounds from which all your speech is constructed. Now, if your operator makes the right finger movements, you should be able to pronounce some of the vowel sounds. Try the sound ah. Ah. The operator has a pedal for her right foot, so you should be able to give the ah more expression. How about it? Ah.
They chose people with the least Welsh-sounding names they could think of.
Pedro, wouldn't you like to say greetings to everybody who's listening to you?
Greetings, everybody. But the opening of the Welsh station was getting closer, and Pedro still hadn't learned to say good night or where's the money or anything. They had to find a voice which was reliable, without accent or inflection, and preferably, in fact, without any strong sense of coming from a real live person at all. Meanwhile, the controller of television for Wales, H. Oldfield Davis, went on the air and tried to pretend that the new station in Wales was, although in Wales, not actually Welsh.
By about the spring of next year, this single network program will regularly contain occasional programs from Wales, say 2 or 3 a month. Of course, it's not going to be easy to have a program which is of particular local interest to a Welshman and, say, to a man of Somerset, especially if the program is in the Welsh language. But I'm not really dismal. I just want to make quite sure that you realize that Wenvo is not a Welsh station and that it doesn't inaugurate a Welsh television service.
Nice try, but time had run out. As the new station prepared to go on the air, no one seemed to know who they'd got. You could feel the tension.
As we wait now in this control room for the announcer to come up on the picture, and you'll hear the opening, this momentous occasion, when Wenvo is put on the air. On the screen now, we can see the television opening crest. Now, 15 seconds to go. On my left, the picture still of Wenvo. And now, the main picture being transmitted by Wenvo has changed to the Houses of Parliament. 5 seconds to go now, and we wait for the announcer's voice.
Brilliant. They'd got the right man, Big Ben. Or at least somebody with a voice uncannily like Big Ben. Naturally, the idea had been thought of many years before by Gerald Cock. He used Big Ben not just as a voice, but actually on the screen. In a slightly alarming way, in fact.
I must tell you about the first cenotaph set after we got this outside broadcast apparatus, 37, because I think it was significant. I refuse to have a commentator. Let the service, let the whole thing tell its own story. I told them to do this, and you know it worked, and it was so moving that there were people in tears who watched the TV set. And at intervals, out went Whitehall, and in came Big Ben advancing towards 11 o'clock like that. Then it went out and back to Whitehall, and then back to Big Ben, you see. Very moving.
Extremely. Well, there you are. It was done, finished. Television, wrapped up. They'd sorted out the systems, the announcers, the engineers, outside broadcasts, all the major problems. Of course, there'd be gradual improvements here and there over the years, but the foundations were laid, and they liked that feeling at the BBC. Even the chief, Sir John Reith, first and still Director General of the corporation, even he, the great engineer himself, had said so.
The experimental days of broadcasting, as such, are over.
Certainly, television had come a long way from John Logie Baird's primitive noises. One day, in August 1957, a man doing routine work at the BBC's Tatsfield receiving station heard this noise. Not all that different from Baird's. Except that what it came from was something very different indeed. The world's first space satellite. It was Russian, and it meant everybody had to start all over again. Sputnik. British space technology became famous overnight. We didn't actually launch the satellite. The Russians handled that side of it. No, what we did, we tracked it from Jodrell Bank and from Goonhilly, the post office. Over the next few hectic years, more satellites shot up, Russian and American, while at Goonhilly...
We haven't received signals from other satellites. We have, in fact, our own simulated satellites dotted around the Lizard Peninsula and near Penzance, and we have directed our dish towards it and have been very well impressed with the extreme accuracy with which it picks up these signals and the great power which one receives from a very modest source.
Well, all I can say is that when the Martians do arrive, they'd better not land near Penzance, that's all. We'd be onto them like that. The motto of the BBC is, "Nation shall speak peace unto nation." And the coming of the satellites made that more of a reality, although Britain had to wait 5 years for it to happen. Not that the time was wasted by the BBC. Ground-based transmitters linked us with television centres in Brussels, Paris, Lille, Italy, Denmark and Switzerland. But something was lacking. There was this uneasy feeling that there were possibilities of communication between human beings besides the Eurovision Song Contest. Then it came. In July 1962, the Americans launched Telstar 1, and for the first time, the old world and the new, two mighty continents, spoke directly to each other.
Hello? Hello? Hello there. Can you hear me? I can hear you fine. Hello? You hear me okay? Yes, very fine. Very good. Right. Yes? I'm bringing it out at a level too high. Yes? You're certainly on very loud. Right.
It's only by that kind of direct communication, which these new miracles of technology offer us, that we can really come to understand other nations. Even from that test telephone link, for example, we discover that the American word for low is high, which is our word for low, and things like that. But true human contact demands more than just the sound of voices. We need more from each other than bleep, bleep, or even hello, hello, however illuminating that may be. We need to see each other. And only television can give us that. So here is the real miracle of that month, July 1962, when the first TV pictures beamed out into space from the United States, bounced off Telstar, down to Goonhilly, and landed on Raymond Baxter. The vividness of his description can only be called extraordinary.
Here we are. Here we are. There's a bar. Now, we are anticipating... That's a man's face. There it is. There it is. That's the picture. You see it for yourself. There it is. It's a man. Captain Booth looking anxiously at the quality. There it is. Captain Booth still looking worried at it. There's the unmistakable image. There is the first live television picture across the Atlantic with rather less than 4 minutes of available time left.
Available time left for what? Until the end of civilization, as Mr. Baxter knows it, presumably. Anyway, we had entered into the global village. Instant communication was talked about ceaselessly. But a broadcast telephone conversation, yes, it was another first, between Alistair Cook in New York and an overexcited BBC science correspondent in London put the instant bit, and indeed the communication bit, into some kind of perspective.
Well, I'm told that this conversation is going 6,500 miles up to Telstar, which is itself 2,500 miles above the Earth. I was wondering what you in America thought about the British part in this operation.
You say the reaction to in America?
Yes.
To Telstar?
Yes.
To the British contribution?
Exactly. Do you think that this in fact means that we shall in fact cement international relations with this marvellous new system of communications, or do you think that it might in fact cause more trouble than it does good?
Well, with the first two, I think that one.
I was wondering whether you thought that this instant communication by this new system was likely to continue to cause perhaps as much trouble as it does good.
I only get a few words because I think our friend Telstar is tired of us all and is on his way.
Don't worry, I'll send you a letter. Television moved in on Telstar in a big way on July 23rd, with what I imagine was meant to be a spectacular, when the whole of Eurovision combined, more or less, to send live coverage of Europe across the Atlantic, showing Americans what we in Europe really looked like. At least those Americans who had good night vision.
My name is Richard Dimbleby. 54 of our cameras in Europe are going to bring you live pictures. May I say now, no tape, no recording. Everything you see is as it's happening here. Live pictures from all over the European continent. It's long after dark here in Europe, it's late at night, but nevertheless our cameras now are going to try to bring you some of the vigor and the beauty of our continent. Let us go to the northernmost point of the Eurovision circuit, right up here in the Arctic Circle.
Welcome to Gällivare in northern Sweden. We have quite a few mosquitoes up here, 1,000 miles away from Brussels.
Small fragments, perhaps, of what we can show you, and perhaps the real, tangible heritage that Europe has to offer to the West lies in the brains and the hands of our people. Let us go out once again now, and this time just to see what, at this time on a summer night, the people of Europe are doing.
Here and now, we're with the night shift at the European Center for Nuclear Research. This is the ring tunnel of the world's second biggest atom smasher in action now. Tonight, as every night, they're trying to find the building blocks of the universe.
Well, they're working hard in Europe tonight.
Not quite hard enough, some of them.
We still hope that in the course of the next half minute or so, we may be able to restore our own communications with London, England, where we're hoping to end our program. At the end of what has been a remarkable day in the world of television.
And that's where we'll leave this unofficial history of television for this evening. Next Sunday, we'll conclude with part 4. Time now for one more quick crack tonight, the bright Dixieland favourite, 12th Street Rag. This version comes from Sidney Bechet and his New Orleans Feet Warmers.
Good evening, I'm Charles Collins. Leading abortion law reformer Dr. Bertram Weiner has died at the age of 58. Dr. Weiner was born in Scotland and became a controversial figure in Melbourne after setting up the first fertility control clinic in Melbourne in the early 70s. A family spokesman says he died at his family property on Friday night. He had undergone several heart bypass operations. No funeral date has yet been set. Australian Democrats leader Senator Janine Haynes says the result of the party's leadership ballot should show dissidents she has the full support of the membership. Senator Haynes received more than 80% of the vote. The national ballot was held after Deputy Leader and Economic Spokesman John Siddons quit the Democrats to form the Unite Australia Party. Queensland Senator Michael Macklin is the Deputy Leader. Israel would like the United Nations Interim Force in Lebanon to be disbanded and for new arrangements to be made by the UN and the governments immediately concerned to restore tranquility to Lebanon's Southland. Jay Bashinsky reports.
That objective coincides with the UN Security Council's current deliberations over renewal of UNIFIL's mandate. It could also explain why Israeli forces opened fire on a clearly marked UN field headquarters earlier this week, killing an Irish Army corporal. Interviewed at the scene, his commanding officer, Colonel Harry Smith, said it was a deliberate act.
Do you think, sir, that they were actually aiming at this building? I've no doubt about it. Knowing what this building was? Yes, they knew what this building was.
And what was the alleged provocation? Were you given any plausible or at least attempted explanation?
Well, they claimed that they were armed elements in or around the area, and that this building was vacated and it was no longer a UN occupation.
The Irish battalion commander serving with UNIFIL believes the peacekeeping force would have to be disbanded if his officers and men pulled out of the multinational force. Jay Bushinsky, Brashit, Lebanon.
Heroin valued at $16 million Australian has vanished after being stored at London's Heathrow Airport. John Taylor reports.
The heroin was in a carton which held 200 grams of the deadly drug, with a street value of about £5,000. The consignment was on its way to Canada, where it was intended for medical use. Sometime after reaching Heathrow, the drugs went missing, but airline chiefs say the facts were reported immediately to Canadian police. Scotland Yard has denied reports that police are furious with Air Canada over alleged delays in reporting the loss.
Members of the Ku Klux Klan have hurled rocks, bottles and cans at a group of blacks and whites attempting to march through an all-white county in Georgia. The march was planned to mark Thursday's birthday of the former civil rights leader, Reverend Martin Luther King. At least 9 people were arrested and a number of the marchers were hit by debris. There are no blacks in the county, which has a population of 38,000. Cricket, and Australia has won its first game in the Benson & Hedges World Series Cup by defeating England. Alan Border won the toss and decided to bat first, a gamble that paid dividends when Dean Jones scored 101 and Jeff Marsh hit 93 runs. After their 50 overs, Australia were 4 for 261, leaving England a chase at 5.24 runs per over. England started slowly but gradually built up their run rate to the stage where an exciting finish saw them on 9 for 250, just 12 runs short of victory. The next match is between Australia and the West Indies on Tuesday at the MCG. News time, 9:04.
John Allison Monkhouse believed that a funeral service is to say goodbye to someone loved and admired, and the choice of ceremony is a very personal decision. John Allison Monkhouse offer an alternative to the traditional service, one that reflects the character and interest of the person concerned, perhaps outdoors, or in one of their 7 private chapels. And of course, John Allison Monkhouse also arranged church services in keeping with all religions and beliefs. John Allison Monkhouse, caring for people for over 100 years.
Melbourne's weather. A few showers developing overnight as a freshening west-norwesterly wind shifts cooler southwesterly. Cool and partly cloudy tomorrow with a shower or two and a moderating southwesterly wind. An overnight low of 15 and a top tomorrow of 21 degrees. Out on the bays, west to norwesterly winds of 15 knots, freshening to 20 to 25 knots ahead of a southwesterly change of similar strength overnight, a wind moderating to 15 knots later tomorrow. Seas rising to rather rough overnight, then abating to choppy later tomorrow. Tuesday and Wednesday will both be fine with a top in the mid-20s, before a warmer day on Thursday with an expected top of around 30. Currently in Melbourne, it's 17 degrees. I'm Charles Collins.
This has been 3DB Newsfront.
Lord, make me an instrument of your peace. Where there is hatred, let me sow love. Where there is injury, pardon. Where there is doubt, faith. Where there is despair, hope. Where there is darkness, light. And where there is sadness, joy. O Divine Master, grant that I may not so much seek to be consoled as to console. To be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love. For it is in giving that we receive. It is in pardoning that we are pardoned. And it is in dying that we are born to eternal life.
It's 9:06 at Melbourne's own 3DB. And time for the Family Counsellor program with Father Gerard Dowling. If you'd like to call, the number is 654-6111, 654-6111, and our out-of-town number, toll-free 008 331 612, 008 331 612. Father Dowling, good evening.
Good evening, Frank. How are you?
Fine, fine.
You're in blue.
Yes.
It sort of suits you.
The old blue T-shirt.
That's an in-house joke that won't be of any value outside the walls of the studio. And very wonderful to invite you to the program tonight. I'm being very cautious. You see, last week I began with a rather abrupt experience because I put my little hand on this very hot lamp here. So I'm going to judiciously avoid that and not make any great scream to upset you all. Anyway, it's lovely to be here. I think that I made my expression last, when I was, you wouldn't know about this, when I was entering this new year, that I would regard each day as a bonus from the Lord. So I think as we sit at the microphone these days, in this interesting demilitarised zone here at DB.
I like that, demilitarised zone.
Yes. We regard each program as a bonus. No one knows what's going to happen. Well, I don't put it that way. I hope that somebody knows. But you might just utter a quiet prayer that all will go well for all of us.
As many as possible.
That we'll all move into the great new era, whatever is the future for 3DB. And we realise how small and fragile we are when big men play chess. We might end up on the sideline.
I was right. They had lunch.
They had lunch.
They had lunch.
Did they?
Decided what they were going to do with the whole thing.
Oh, I see. Over lunch. All right. So we're here, and let's enjoy every minute of it while it lasts. So Frank has given you all the information about how to call. We have a few lines to spare at this early juncture in the program. And I hope that in some way that my being here tonight can be of assistance to you. That's why I'm here, because in some way, hopefully, I can help you. Last week, we had, we might say, a program with a difference. We had a lot of young people ringing, very, very young people, and that was beaut. I do feel maybe if we could encourage young people, if you're going to ring, perhaps you could try to ring in the first hour. Nobody's told me to say this, but I just think that while I welcome everyone who calls, it would be good, I think, if we're just people ring up to say hello. Well, that's good occasionally, a few calls, but if we can concentrate a little more on the perhaps people who really have some particular need, some particular stress or strain in your life, well, I'd like to try and focus on that. However, that's not trying ever to put anybody off. Everybody's welcome, but just stop and think, well, maybe before you make the call, if somebody else might possibly be in a particular need, and that their need could be possibly greater than yours. It's just a thought to think about. I've never ever put restrictions on people ringing, and I don't intend to now, but just to sort of perhaps focus on that. And but I really welcome all you young people. I think it's beautiful that you listen and that you bother to call. So I hope that's not misunderstood. You're all welcome. It's just that we want to try to concentrate on those particular needs that may be particularly demanding of people. I have a number of messages that I'll address as we go along, but maybe it'll be good just to sort of open up with some calls to get ourselves established here on Melbourne Zone 3DB on this 18th of January. You've already welcomed, of course, our friend Frank McKay, who is, I think whatever happens to the studios, Frank will be probably embalmed in one of the walls. Because Frank's just sort of...
You mean they're going to brick me up in here for all time and eternity?
I think that's possible, Frank. I don't think that you can ever be regarded as anywhere else but somehow entwined, involved with 3DB.
Well, I'd like to state at this juncture I'm very good at sweeping floors.
Oh, that's good. We might have to work together on that. So Frank is in charge of the keeping us on the air and putting us in touch with everybody. In the reception area we have Pauline and Claire, who will be looking after people coming in and recording the calls. Our normal prayer team for tonight, Pat and Helen, are on holiday, so we have Maureen, who is a regular, and two people who haven't been here before, and of course we naturally welcome Maureen, but particularly tonight for their first visit to this interesting place. Joan and Nan, great to have you here tonight, and to have the three of you as our prayer team, because that is a very important dimension of the program. Not just have people saying prayers, but to provide that prayerful dimension, that support to myself and the team, and also to the people who call, whether they specifically mention some sort of prayer request or just the fact that they may be in some sort of need You are there opening the power of the Lord to us all. So that's very good. And we're going now to open up with our first call at 9:12. And our first caller is Ron. Are you there, Ron?
Hello, Father.
Ron, you're on the air.
Yes, that's right.
Welcome.
Yes, I've been on your I've spoken to you on many occasions, Father.
Yes.
I've got a sort of it's why I am concerned and why I keep bringing this back, and I will prove my innocence, Father, one way or the other. Now, I have 3 little children, which...
Now, just a moment, Ron, we've got to be careful. Are you discussing anything that's before a court at this stage?
Yes. Look, I had, Father, I had access to my children...
No, you haven't answered the question, Ron. Is what you're discussing at the moment subject to court proceedings?
No, it's not a court proceedings.
All right, because as you can be perhaps appreciative, if the matters are, if you've got a court hearing a pending, or your wife a pending rather, well, we just can't discuss it on the air, all right?
Yeah, it's just that, Father, see, my child, when I'm talking about child abuse.
Yes.
That is why I'm talking to you tonight. Now, I can only speak and gauge in the fact and how my children come into my care.
Yes.
Now, my children came into my care on the 29th of the 12th, 1986. They were with the father for 1 week. Now, my child had came into my care. He had a badly bruised knee, was shaped like a picture frame. He also had a severe rash. Also, he had an infected ear. Now, I was not giving any letter or medication how to treat this child. I was not giving any medication when a child had come into my care. Please treat my child. Would you please treat your child with this lotion? I was not giving any medication whatsoever.
No.
I spoke to my social work. Actually, I report the matter to the community services on the 29th. My social worker was on leave until the 5th of January. I could not hang it out and sweat it out until then. I called in the doctor.
Mm-hmm.
The doctor had called in to my premises, and he found bruising like shape. The bruising was...
How old is this child?
The child was 9 years old.
Yes.
State wards they are.
Mm-hmm.
The little boy had was bruising going like a greenish colour.
Mm-hmm.
He had the doctor also found the rash, and my child had an affected ear.
Mm-hmm.
Now I gone back, took the drawings back on the 3rd of the 1st, 1987.
Mm-hmm.
Back to the cottage parents.
Mm-hmm.
The cottage parents, she stated, I said, I asked. My son had complained that he had been hit. She said, yes, I smacked him. I said, you have no authority to hit my child. And I said, it states that no children are to be hit by cottage parents.
What states that?
Because...
You said it states...
Yes, I've got the papers to prove that, Father.
Some papers you have?
Yes, that's right.
Well.
And the man at the home, it came out and he swore in a rude manner. And I didn't like it. I didn't abuse that man in any way, but I just walked out in a cool manner and walked off.